Welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Gray. The best thing about being a nurse and entrepreneur over the last 25 years are the relationships I've developed and the people I've met. As a legal nurse consultant, I wanted you to hear from those amazing people in the legal and healthcare communities. I wanted you to hear who they are and to celebrate them with me. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. Let's dive into the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. This week, I am really excited to have a guest on my show that was referred to me as someone that I needed to have on here. So the great thing about this podcast, I was just telling Bonnie this, the great thing about this podcast is that I have my past guests share with me who they think that, I should have on the guest. So Bonnie, I really appreciate you being here. And I really look forward to having this conversation with you and getting to know you. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Great. Let's dive in. So Bonnie, I happen to notice on your LinkedIn that you went to Arizona State.
I did go to Arizona State.
My daughter just graduated from Arizona State in December.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
She's a Sun Devil.
She's a Sun Devil. And the irony is that my high school in San Diego was also a Sun Devil. No coincidence there.
Very good.
Funny how things work out. But I would love to hear about your backstory. What made you decide to go to school? And I saw you went to nursing. You went to nursing at Arizona State?
I did. Nursing.
Okay.
Yep. Got my
Can you
BSN
share a little
State.
bit about before you went to school and what that looked like and how you knew you wanted to get into nursing?
Sure. I guess I was a pretty decisive child. I'm the youngest of 8 kids in my family. And, being the baby, you kind of have to speak up for yourself or whatever. And I've always been pretty vocal. And evidently, I do not remember this, but at I was 12 or so years old, I announced at the Thanksgiving dinner table that I was going to be a pediatric nurse. And they all just kind of said, okay, whatever, and then here we are. I've been a nurse for 31 years and 18 years of that was bedside as a pediatric and NICU nurse. So I guess it must have been a calling. I never had any doubt that was what I was going to do. And I knew it was going to be pediatrics of some sort. And I just went for it. I just decided that's what I was going to do. Went to college, got my BSN, and have been doing that. I graduated in 93. So we won't do the math on how old.
No, I can do that math too. I'm not that far behind you, just so you know.
Right.
I went to nursing school a little bit later than that, but I graduated college not 2 years after that. So
right.
We're in the same boat there. So there wasn't something when you were a kid where you were like a story or an experience that someone had?
Not really. I had a lot of little nephews and nieces, obviously being the youngest. So I was always kind of taking care of them and babysitting and everything. And then when I was in high school, I had a boyfriend whose mother was a nurse practitioner. And she let me shadow her around and everything. And it just solidified that this is definitely what I want to do. And she was kind of my role model. She was an OB, nurse practitioner. So that was very fascinating to be wanting to work with babies and so forth. And she was just very supportive. So she was my inspiration, but I kind of always knew that I wanted to be a nurse.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And I didn't ask you, where are you coming from? Where in the world are you coming from? Usually that's
I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been here for 25-ish, 22, 25, 25 years.
Yeah.
So I've actually lived here longer than I lived in Arizona.
Right. So what brought you out to Jacksonville?
My husband's job. We were living in Denver. We lived in Denver for a short time. And we got transferred with his job down here to Jacksonville.
Okay. So you always knew you wanted to be a pediatric nurse. You went to Arizona State, graduated with your BSN in nursing. And what did you jump right into pediatrics? What did that look like right out of school?
So I jumped right into pediatrics. I got an externship my senior year at the state hospital in Phoenix, which was mostly Spanish speaking. So I actually learned how to speak Spanish quite a bit
Oh, wow.
out of necessity, like trial
Yeah.
by fire.
Yeah.
And then I continued with my pediatric journey, doing regular pediatrics and ICU and trauma and ER and residential treatment centers for emotionally disturbed children. I did. Then I jumped into NICU when I moved here to Jacksonville. I was like, I always wanted to do NICU, so I did NICU for 10 years here in Jacksonville. But while those wasn't a short time, it was actually about 10 years that we lived in Denver. I was actually a contractor for the state of Colorado, and I would go in and do nursing home education and be like a clinical nurse educator for different nursing homes. And it was I was an independent contractor, it was my own business, which I really liked. And I would go in and teach them about, just like medication administration and universal precautions, how to document, all the things like that they had to do. I ran my own business doing education for nursing homes. And I had a contract through the state, which I was the biggest and most successful contractor through the state of Colorado for those things. So I was really going, and then we got transferred here, and I was like, okay, then I'll just go into NICU and that's it. So then I did NICU for 10 years, and then I decided this is kind of a funny story. So at the end of my NICU career, I had a primary patient named a little boy who was very, very genetically compromised, and his mom had the same genetic issues he did. And so, anyway, long story short, I ended up adopting him.
Really?
Because he had nowhere to go. I know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I know. I have 3 children, 3 boys of my own. And then my 4th boy, I adopted as my patient from the NICU. So, but he was very, very ill and he had nowhere to go. So I was like, I told my husband, I'm like, we need to bring him home. We need to adopt him. And then as soon as he met him, he was like, oh yeah, he's our baby. So we brought
my gosh,
baby
as a
home.
baby,
As a baby, because I had him from birth.
Yeah.
So he's never really known anybody. At 3 months old, he was intubated. He was all the things.
Wow.
But when I did bring him home, it kind of underscored that I really needed to be home with him because I tried to take him to like a daycare and he got RSV and like all this. I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. So I went and worked for Aetna in insurance doing case management, utilization management. So that's why I left the NICU, because I kind of brought the NICU home with me.
Yeah. You still used your skills, hands-on.
That was 17 years ago, and I'm still using my skills as we speak. He's 17 now, and he's still very compromised, but he's a lot better than he was. He wasn't supposed to live to be 2. And so I was like, what? You have no idea what you're talking about.
Talk about a calling also.
That was, so that I kind of feel like there's a reason that I was supposed to be a nurse, and it's to save this baby who is now like irreplaceable in our house. Like all of his older brothers just all adore him, and he's wonderful, and he brings just so much joy to our lives. So I feel like the nursing thing really called out to me, like, this is what it was like a God moment. Like, this is what you need to do. This is how, this is all those things. And then my husband had his own God moment where he was like, this is our baby. We need to take him home. So all that to tell you that after the NICU, I went to Aetna for like I did managed care for 7 years. And after that, I went and worked for the University of Texas as their kind of brand ambassador for their College of Nursing. It was 2 university partners that it was for a third-party marketing agency. And so I did University of Texas. I would like travel around the country and go to conferences and learn marketing and learn sales and all those things. So I did that for 5 years. But while that was happening, and here's what you're going to ask me next, why am I a legal nurse consultant after this?
Yeah. And then we're going to unravel all of this, just so you know.
Well, at the very end of my Aetna career, 5 years, or back in 2018, before I got this fabulous job with University of Texas, these lawyers, I had a LinkedIn page because I did that for University of Texas. I had this LinkedIn page, and these lawyers found me on LinkedIn, and they said, oh, you know NICU and you know managed care? And they called me their unicorn. I was like, they're like, you're the only one. And I was like, no, I know other people who know that, but evidently I was the only one they found on LinkedIn. So they were in Chicago, and it was some litigation about, a hospital system and a managed care company out in Vegas, and they were infighting and so forth about billing. So I went through and did this giant 400-hour billing analysis. It was literally more than 400 hours.
Wow.
And found $6 million in deviations and, all this stuff. And then they flew me out to Chicago for deposition training, all this stuff, right? And we got to I went to deposition, which was an experience. It was actually my second deposition. I've done another one also as a first responder. But it was a fantastic experience. And then they settled right before I went to trial. So I didn't go to trial, but that's how I got into legal nursing. Is they found me. I didn't try to be a legal nurse, just like University of Texas found me. I didn't try that. I mean, LinkedIn is an amazing resource. So that's how it all worked out. And then, I started eased into the legal nurse thing while I was working for University of Texas. And then last summer, they laid our whole team off. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going full-time legal nurse consulting. And here I am.
Wow. What a journey. I love it. Okay. I would like to unravel this a bit here.
There's a lot to unpack.
Clearly, no, but it's all good stuff. It's all great. It's amazing. And now I can see why I needed to talk to you. So let's go back to when you were in Denver and you had your own business and you were contracted with the state. What led you into starting that business? Because while this podcast is about legal nurse consulting, it's also about entrepreneurship and, that bridge between nursing and business and all of that. So I'm curious on what led you to that first, I'm going to own my own business moment.
Right. Well, I was working for a residential treatment center that took care of a residential for emotionally abused children. And they have all kinds of regulations through the state of Colorado that they have to have classes for this and classes for that and classes for this and classes for that. Well, I had my second baby and I wanted to be kind of a stay-home mom, but I needed the income. So after I quit my job at the residential treatment center, I said, okay, I'm just going to open my own business. I'm going to continue to do all of their education as a business through the state, and still can, I got approved through the state to do it independently. And then I thought, well, there's lots of people that need education, and I looked at these nursing home regulations and I was like, okay, they need this, they need this, they need this, they need this. So I went ahead and actually built a curriculum for all that and submitted it to the state and it was approved. And then it was just a matter of marketing at that point, like getting nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And, anybody that has anybody living there with people who are not nurses taking care of them needed my help. And they were forced to take my class if they were going to be giving medications, and they were forced to take it for universal precautions and all those other things. So there was a huge opportunity there. So it blew up. I just started, I would send, mailers. This was back, 20 years ago. So I would mail mailers to, and I'd go to networking events, and I did this all because I wanted to be home with my babies, but I ended up not being home all the time. But there was no such thing as like Zoom anything 20 years ago. So that's how that all evolved. It just got big. And then when we moved from Colorado, Florida doesn't have the same regulations.
I see.
I didn't want to start over again. So
Right. Did you really enjoy running that business? I mean, the whole business side of it and being your own boss and, doing things.
And always wanted to do that again. So that's where those lawyers contacted me, I was like, oh, here's my new business idea, and I had no idea that there were people out there already doing it. I didn't know.
That's really interesting. Okay. So now are you typically, what do you typically see? Is it all across the board? Because I know that you have, a breadth of knowledge with utilization management and managed care and pediatrics. And what does that look like for you in the legal nurse world these days?
So when I first started, obviously I was doing the managed care, level of care, billing analysis using, interqual and Milliman care guidelines and all that. That was my first huge project that took like 6 or 8 months. It was 400 hours. But after that, then, those same lawyers were like, well, could you do a motorcycle case? And I'm like, well, I'm a pediatric nurse, but, I am a trauma nurse. So I do know, what that's supposed to look like. And I worked in the ER for 2 years. So, and not only just on the pediatric side, I also did adult ER too. So, because the place I worked, you kind of didn't just do one or the other.
Right.
So, so I was like, yeah, I'll look at it. And then like little things like that started happening to me where I was like, well, could you just look at this? Or could you just look at that? It was
Yeah.
like little things. So it kind of branched itself out. And then last summer, I decided when I went full time doing this, I subbed for somebody who is very, very nursing home heavy. And so I was like, I can do nursing homes. I know all about nursing homes.
Right. Yeah.
I've
No
been
kidding.
in and out of nursing homes for 10 years of my career. So that happened. And then and then I just started heavily marketing. And then when the cases started coming in, a lot of them at first were some nursing home cases, but a lot of it is medical malpractice.
Yeah.
So I would say, and then I got certified as a life care planner. So, which helps, my managed care background helps a lot with that.
Mhm.
So, and then somehow somebody got my name up in Northern Michigan
Mhm.
and they contacted me about doing, they were a defense attorney, like a public prosecutor or public defender up in Michigan. And they were like, hey, can you look at this as a SIDS case? And,
Right.
I did that. And then like, it's almost like he passed me around all his friends. Like, so
Wow.
Northern Michigan loves Sunshine Nurse. I don't know why. They got all kinds of clients up there.
Right.
But only when it's a pediatric thing, because I'd actually be, a testifying expert. So I limit my testifying expert stuff to pediatrics, NICU, and life care planning for me personally.
Right.
And then everything else is behind the scenes. But I can, because I now have between 10 and 12 subs going at any given time, I have nursing home subs, I have orthopedic, I have oncology, I have OBGYN, I have, so I hire people based on what I need for that case. And then I continue to use them as long as they do a good job. So I have lots of people working for me. And so I can take a lot of different kinds of cases.
Yeah, no, that makes sense completely. So how long have you been doing life care planning? I'm just curious.
Well, unofficially, I did a life care plan. My first one was 17 years ago when I took Daniel home. Because I needed a plan and I needed to know how to manage it. And I didn't know that I was doing a life care plan, but that's what I did.
Yeah.
I did medical cost projections. I did all those things without even knowing what I was doing. It was super instinctual. And then last year it kept coming up. So I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and get certified because I was feeling weird that I wasn't. And I learned that you could get certified in such a thing. So I was like, oh, okay. And I went ahead and got the actual certification. But I've been doing that kind of work for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because I get this question, I actually get the question a lot is, would you, recommend life care planning? And I actually, was interested and purchased the certification course, but I got busy.
Right.
And so I realized that it was pretty intensive. And so I had to take a step back. So, what would your recommendation be for number one? What would make a good life care planner? And number two, would you recommend going through that, or when would you recommend someone making that decision? Because I know that question comes up a lot.
Yeah, if you have a heart for that sort of thing, then yes, go for it. There's not as many cases out there. I have been taking in some cases where I evaluate other people's life care plans on the defense side. So there's some of that. As long as you're willing to do both, you could probably, I don't know that I could keep myself busy just doing life care planning. But I almost always have at least one of them going at a time. So there is, I have two of them right now, but so there is work out there, but you just have to be really good at marketing. And as far as who should do it, it's truly like, going back to the whole nursing 101, it's like looking holistically at the whole patient. And I'm talking not only their finances, not only their diagnoses, but how is it interacting with their family? Like, how are they, if you have a heart for that kind of thing, then yeah, definitely be a life care planner. And you also have to have a sense for, what is this person going to need? You have to understand the downstream implications of therapies and, how to, therapies or surgeries or, are they going to need their house, renovated? Are they now in a wheelchair? Do they need their bathrooms torn out to become, ADA compliant? Like, you have to really think outside the box and think in a big way, which is why life care planning, planners make a lot more money than regular legal nurse consultants because it's a whole different skill set.
Right. Exactly.
And it's a different scope of practice. So I do both. but that works for me because I have such a managed care background, and
Yeah.
I did this for years for
Right.
Aetna without even
So,
knowing that that's what I was
right.
doing. I didn't have
Right.
any idea that I was being
Yeah.
a life care planner when I was case
Yeah.
management. If you have a
Yeah.
case management background, that's a great way to use
Natural.
that background.
Yeah.
Case management is big, and just have a very a good handle on the clinical piece. You really, for all of this, you really have to be clinically strong, like
Sure.
really strong.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
That's really helpful because I know like I said, that question comes up and it seems to be kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you clarifying that.
Sure.
What I wanted to ask you also is that you've talked about marketing, right? You marketed yourself in Denver. You marketed yourself with the University of Texas, right? You said.
Mhm.
And then they just fell the attorneys just fell in your lap because you were on LinkedIn marketing something else. How after that particular moment when you decided you were going to move forward with your legal nurse consulting, how did you approach marketing? What is your favorite type of marketing? What does that look like to you? Because everybody has their own version of marketing and none of them are bad. It's just, what resonated with you on how to market yourself.
Well, when I decided to take Sunshine Nurse and make Sunshine Nurse my business, no, then I just kind of went all in. And, it's kind of one of those things where you have to spend money to make money type thing.
Yeah.
Now, not a lot of people do it the way I do it, where it just kind of fell in my lap. And then all of a sudden I have full time availability to market myself because a lot of people are trying to do this while they're still working. So
Mhm.
for me, I feel like Sunshine Nurse was accelerated because 40 hours a week,
Mm,
50 hours a week, I was focusing on Sunshine
yeah.
Nurse. Whereas somebody
Yeah.
else who's working full time, it may
Right.
take 3 or 4 years to get to where I got in 1 year
Mhm.
because they don't have the time. And it really is a numbers game. Like you really have to, my approach
Mhm.
to it is multifaceted,
Mhm.
where I have a huge network of
Mhm.
people. I know like everybody in Jacksonville, Florida. So,
Right.
so I have a ton of people who I just called
Yeah.
upon my network. I'm a
Yeah.
member of a lot of volunteer organizations.
Mm.
I was in
Mhm.
Junior League. I'm a sustainer for Junior League for like 20 years. I've been in Junior
Mhm.
League 25 years. I did a lot of volunteer work through the hospital, a lot through Wolfson Children's Hospital, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but to me, the networking is
Yeah.
really, really key. That has really been a kickstart for me. Other than that, I have spent a lot of money flying around the country to go to conferences.
Right.
And I do great because that was what I used to do for University of
Mm.
Texas. So
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
parlayed all those skills into Sunshine Nurse. And so now, I mean, I have booths at conferences at least once a quarter. So
Mm.
that's a really big source for me. So between networking, oh, and then there's the referral business. So once you get
Right.
somebody, like I said, in Northern Michigan, all of a sudden
Yeah.
I'm being passed around to
Everybody.
all the people who need pediatric expert witnesses. Um, and the other way, there are two other remaining is LinkedIn, which I find tremendously effective. That
Mhm.
is how I got my start, and I'm
Right.
very consistent on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Even if it's just a little advertisement type post, I'm very
Mhm.
consistent on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and I do some email campaigns, which I find to be the least effective. But
Mhm.
they do work. It's just you have to. That's a numbers game. Like
Yeah.
you have to send
Yeah.
out
For sure.
thousands of emails before you
Yeah.
actually get a hit.
A reply. Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. So, since we talk about LinkedIn a lot on here and we talk about email marketing ish, I would like to ask you when it comes to networking in person. You said
Mhm.
you do booths, you are a member of, obviously different types of
Right.
groups. For
Right.
someone that's just starting out, that's willing to, because there are a lot of nurses that are afraid, but let's
Right.
just take one nurse that's like, okay, I'm ready. I don't quite get the LinkedIn thing. I don't quite get the email thing, but I'm willing to step out and meet people in person. What would your best advice be for someone to get started in that realm?
When it comes to volunteer work and networking, you have to do what you love. So, for example, for me, when I was in my 20s, I joined the Junior League, and the mission of the Junior League is to promote volunteerism, to develop the potential of other women, and to improve the community. And those are those are passions of mine.
Right.
So I love to mentor and I love to be mentored. So that particular organization was very effective for me as a way to give back to the community. You can't join these things and these groups just because you want to, build your business. You have to do it because it takes a lot of time. You have to really like find something that you're passionate about and then give your time and talk to everybody. And I mean, I'm also passionate about playing tennis. I play a lot of tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I never go out on the tennis court without several Sunshine Nurse,
Yes.
business cards in my tennis bag.
Yeah.
And I have gotten business on the tennis court because
I get
lawyers
it.
play
Yeah.
tennis,
Yeah.
and lawyers are part of the junior league and lawyers volunteer at the hospital and lawyers are everywhere. So you just have to be able to be really friendly, but make sure that you're genuine because the last thing you want to do is start, volunteering at a homeless shelter or something, and you're not really there for the right reasons. And then you're distracted and unhappy because you're not meeting lawyers. You have to do those kind of things because you love them and you love to give back. And after that, you get to know people and then people who know people. And then everybody you know becomes a big part of your circle. So I would say for a new nurse starting out, if you want to start networking, just find something you're passionate about and do it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a piece of the networking puzzle.
Right. I love that. Because attorneys are humans just like us. We all do things. We all have things that we're passionate about or enjoy. And I find it interesting because I know that I, at one point, had joined a specific networking group, and it was very forced. It was something that I love networking with people, right? Obviously, I have this podcast. I love networking with people. So this was a general, I'm going to network with these people because we're all humans, but it was a bit forced, and I did struggle a bit in wanting to show up and wanting to be part of the people in the group. Amazing people. But the structure around it was that, I'm trying to pitch my business in a way that it makes sense to people. And so it was really pitch focused, which is great. And you learn to pitch your business, but it's not very natural. And I love the fact that you gave the example of being on the tennis court, because there was a period of time I did play tennis in college, and so when I was going through my divorce here, I needed new friends, and so I joined a tennis club, and I hadn't played in like 30 years. And I met the most amazing people. And you're right. I mean, that's way more natural to have that conversation about what you've got going on, because they see little blurps of you here and there on social media. Like, they like to ask questions. And that is a lot more of a natural conversation. And they're way more inclined to refer you to someone that they know, or if they are an attorney themselves. So I love the fact that you say focus on the things that you love and the things that resonate with you, because it just becomes natural. Yeah.
Exactly. Because people know when you're faking it.
Yeah,
or at least they do when they know when I'm faking it. I don't, I can't get any Academy Awards. If I don't want to be somewhere, it's going to show.
Yeah.
It's going to show. But you also have to be able to give of yourself without expecting anything in return.
Absolutely.
And if you're there for the wrong reasons, that is also going to show. And then people will get the wrong impression of you. So you just have to be genuine. If you're genuine and you just put your heart and soul into it, good things happen. It's all karma too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other part of that too is, I think that we tend to look at, targeting in on, the attorneys themselves. So one could say, well, how do I get to the bar association of my states, just to network? But really, it doesn't even have to be that direct. I mean, you go show up to the tennis club and there's attorneys there, or they have a friend, their neighbor, or whoever is someone that could use your services. So focusing on things other than just directly focusing on
And you have to
meeting
remember, there's a
attorneys.
lot of us out there all hammering these same attorneys.
Exactly. No,
So you
exactly.
want to be able to stand out from the crowd
Yeah.
in a good way,
Yeah.
in a good way. And having a warm introduction is a great way to stand out, because someone will say, "Oh yeah, I know Bonnie. I played tennis with her. Let me
Mhm.
introduce you. You know what? I
Mhm.
know a personal injury attorney. I bet you haven't met
Exactly.
them. Let's go over here and meet them." I'm like, "Oh, that would be great." And then there's a
Exactly.
face and a personality and a name to Sunshine Nurse, instead of just being an email or somebody on LinkedIn.
Right. Right.
I really bring myself into everything I do, and try to operate with integrity and be real. And
Mhm.
I think that that's the most important thing in any business that you start, that you just have
Mhm.
to be real and have integrity, and just be genuine, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's
Yeah.
never going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I no, it's absolutely, being yourself. I think that there's this fear too, of trying to be someone that you think they want you to be. Now, I'm going to explain that. So, for example, if you're promoting yourself on LinkedIn, there a lot of people are like, well, I don't know what to write. I don't want, what are they going to want to hear, versus being yourself and sharing what you want people to know. Right.
Right.
So there are two different camps in that, but I do find that I meet a lot of people that are afraid to share, because they feel like they're not going to share what the attorneys want to hear. Right.
Right.
But when
That's the
you're
wrong
genuine
approach.
and
Yeah.
yourself, and that's how you stand out, because
Yeah.
you're just being you. And so that I've found
Right.
that over the years, that's really um that resonates in person and also online, is
I
just
agree
being yourself
100%.
and
I
not being
agree.
afraid. Good.
And
I'm
and
glad
don't
you
worry about
agree.
what other people want to hear. Say
Yeah.
what you want to say.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
really what it
Yeah.
boils down to. What do
Yeah.
you want to say? Like, why are you great? What is your deal? Toot your own horn a little bit, but be real. But
Right.
don't worry about what other people want to hear. If they don't want to hear it, they'll just scroll on by. It's
Exactly. There's
totally fine.
plenty of people out there that, it's like, not everyone is for everyone. It's like,
That's right.
there are certain people that resonate with you, and there are certain people that do not resonate with you. And that will always be the case no matter what you do. You might as well show up and enjoy yourself.
Right.
Right. Then force it, because like you said, it's very obvious when you're forcing something, and you just become a name with a bunch of letters at the end of it.
That's
I
right.
was just
That's
re-listening
right.
to one of my podcast episodes. That does come up a lot, because there are a lot of us out there. And, those on the other side see, oh, those must be the legal nurse consultants. There's a name and a bunch of letters at the end of it. So,
That's right.
how do you stand? There's a reason we have those letters. Yes. Um, but standing out, besides for your name and a bunch of those letters, is really just being yourself. I know that I found that for myself, because for me, marketing online and email marketing has been more my luck, because I am time challenged, like you said. I'm
Right.
still working in the hospital. I have backed off a day or so, but finding the time to go out there and meet people in person has been a challenge for me. I
Right.
love it, and I totally see the value in it.
Mhm.
But translating that in person, getting to know you, is into the you know cyberspace, is a challenge sometimes, and
It
it really
is.
does. It comes down to being yourself. I assume that you would totally agree with that.
Right. And when you're trying to work, basically full time in a hospital or somewhere, and then do this business on top, the biggest thing is you just have to be patient, because
Yeah.
you got to remember that you're not giving it 100 hours a week, or
Yeah.
you can't work 100 hours a week. You're already working 40, 50 hours a week at one job. You can
Mhm.
only do so much without driving yourself crazy. So it's just going to take a little longer. It still will
Right.
happen, but you have
Mhm.
to be patient, because with me, happened very quick.
Right.
Well, and not really though. I mean, I did start 6 years ago, and it was part time
Yeah.
only.
Exactly. It's been a.
So not totally quick, but the last year accelerated because I was not working, strictly doing Sunshine Nurse. since, beginning of last summer. So it's been, a year and a half or whatever. But I hope that other people don't get discouraged and think, oh, I can't go out and do volunteer work because I, have all the other stuff to do. There's other ways. That's just how I did it.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. There's a lot that can be said for email marketing, and I just don't translate as well, me personally, on email and social media and whatever, as I do in person. So I rely on my strength, which is my personal skills.
Yeah. No, I love that. That takes me into probably one of my last questions, about being patient, because that seems to be a big topic, and the fear of how long is this going to take me to be successful, and sticking it out. So what advice would you give people that may or may not be just starting, may have already been, in this for a year or 2 years and are working full time and have lives and things like that? And it's easy to say, be patient, but what would you say to them, and to encourage them to, keep going? What would that look like? What sort of steps should they take in order to keep going, I suppose?
My advice would be to really be introspective and say, why am I doing this? Like, what's the end goal? What is this supposed to look like? And what do you want? So is the end goal that you want to be 100% stay at home, and working as a legal nurse consultant? Or is the end goal that you just want to make some money on the side? Is the end goal, what is the goal? And then make a plan. Maybe you're okay with just quote unquote being a subcontractor, and letting other people spend all the money and time on networking and marketing and all those things. And at the end of the day, maybe the money you make as a subcontractor is your side hustle, and that's what you do, and that's what your business looks like. That's great. I mean, or is your goal to be a stay home legal nurse consultant, and this is what you do? I have to tell you, there's not a lot of staying home for me. Because the way that I market, I am out, I'm about, I am all over the place. I mean, this year alone, I've probably done 8 or 10 conferences. I still have all the volunteer work that I do. There's not a lot of staying home. I set aside certain in-office days to get my own cases done, my own life care planning, the defense stuff, and overseeing the subcontractors. That takes a lot of time. Right. So it really is a full-time job to run a business in general. And the conventional wisdom is that it takes 2 years to get full-time, 2 years to get your business up and running to a point where you're actually in the black. Right. So if you're only going to work on this 10 hours a week, then you have to multiply that times 4. So maybe it'll take you 8 years before you can quit. Right. And maybe that's not okay with you. Yeah. I don't know, but you have to kind of, decide how much you're going to put into it. Right. And that's, that's if all goes well. And then, or it could go better. You could land one big giant contract, and the whale. Yeah, exactly. Or whatever. Exactly. We're all trying to land, Yeah. Who knows? But I would say that if you have to make some goals and just decide, because I can tell you the subcontractors that I work with are invaluable, and I love working with them. Mm-hmm. I feel like I pay well, and at least I think I do. Mm-hmm. Maybe they would make more as a business owner, but then you have to remember that I'm spending a lot of money on conference fees, flights, hotel rooms, association memberships, marketing, all the things, and all non-billable time. So, there's something to be said for, do you want it to just be simple, or do you want to have the whole full-blown owning a business experience? So I think it's all about making goals and setting goals and deciding. I love that. We don't really talk enough about the goal setting on this podcast, so I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm very goal oriented. I love it. No, trust me. You are speaking my language. I mean, half these books here are about goal setting. So, you're definitely speaking my language. I think I have one last question regarding the subcontractors. You said, you've got your handful of subcontractors that are invaluable to you, that you've, found to obviously you work very well with. I know that this comes up a lot, and I see it every day. I'd love to be mentored by you or by someone, or I'd love to do subcontracting for someone.
what is your best advice for those that are just so gung-ho about subcontracting for someone? What would your advice be to them on how to find someone to subcontract for?
I would say find someone who's running. If you're trying to choose, first of all, it's very difficult. Let's put it this way. The contractor, the LNC, is really in the driver's seat because I get resumes every day from people who want to be a subcontractor for me.
Right.
So, and to me, I love the mentoring process and I love teaching people how I do things. And I was mentored by someone who is absolutely fabulous. And I spread my wings and flew off out of the nest pretty quickly. But I want to give that back to other new LNCs, So I would say my advice would be figure out who has a successful business that you like the culture of, because there's different, even in this world, like Sunshine Nurse has a culture and somebody else has a culture, and there's different, like somebody that you click with and that you like the culture of their company, by talking to them and hope and just, hope they make sure you stay in your lane. If you're an OB, GYN person, don't, send me your stuff for an oncology case because I'm probably not going to look at it. Right. I'll put it in a file as long as it's labeled, OBGYN subcontractor. I'll put it in my email file and come back to it later. But, but I would say just, be open-minded to criticism because I've had some who I've said, okay, this was, obviously a good try for your first try, but we have to change all this stuff around, and then they just come unglued. Well, I can't have that, No. You have to also understand, that my attorney clients have certain expectations and need consistency with reports because that's what they're paying me for.
Right.
So if you've seen one Sunshine Nurse report, you've seen them all. They look exactly the same. They're all the same headers. They're all the same breakdown. The same chronology looks the same, and all that. So that's what I need, and that's what I'm paid for.
Right.
So I would say, subcontracting is the best way to learn how to be an LNC. I never took one of those classes, those very expensive. I never took, the only classes I ever took were I took some modules for the AALNC, which I thought were great, and they were very affordable.
Yeah.
I went to a couple of conferences to learn about, I went to the JERC conference last year, which is a really good one. I went to another one, which was awful. But I ended up, learning there. I make lemons when I have lemonade out of lemon.
Sure. Yep.
But my advice to new subcontractors would just be to just keep being persistent. Figure out who you want to work for and just, watch for posts. Watch, because I'm always posting like, I need a such and such and such, watch for those posts and just keep watching and keep asking questions and keep interacting because persistence counts and helps. I really do notice when people are really like, I know who wants to work for me. And usually when people want to work for me, they will listen to constructive criticism and they will want to learn and they will, they will want to do a good job. And even if, it's a little bit of a miss the first time, I don't give up unless they're jerks.
Right.
And I don't want to work with them. But I make appointments and say, okay, let's put up my end report next to your report and we'll compare the two and see why this, I did it the way I did.
Yeah.
So
I love that. And I totally agree with the fact that being persistent, not in a way that, you're in your face, but there are so many of us out there. There are plenty of fish in the sea, but there are so many of us out there. I have to say that. Side note, there are still so many fish in the sea, but there are so many of us out there that it's sad, but people just kind of blend in. So being persistent is another way to stand out. If you're a fan of Bonnie and you love all of the things she stands for, then stick around in her corner more often than not, and she will notice you. I know it's like you just don't notice people, and it's just the nature of it, unless they continue to show up in a very kind way, in a very natural way, in a very,
Right.
So, being persistent and being open, that seems to be the.
Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Yeah, the gist of it. Good. Okay, Bonnie. Well, I appreciate you sharing all of this wisdom and your story and your journey. And I can't wait to stay connected with you and hopefully someday meet in person at one of these events. So I really appreciate you being here. And for the listeners, can you please share where you can be found?
You're asking me. Oh.
Yeah. It'll be in the show notes, but but share where you.
I can be found at www.sunshinenurse.com. You can find me on LinkedIn under Bonnie McCormick. You can find me on Facebook on multiple of the LNC groups. I post a lot. I'm everywhere. I'm all over the place, but those are the main places.
Not hard to find.
Not hard to
Great.
find.
All right. And that will be in the show notes so they can click on it and find you.
Okay.
Easy. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us in this fun conversation on the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and empowering as I always do. And I hope that you share this episode with your friends. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could leave us a review or comment, as I would love to share them in the future episodes. Or hop on over into my DMs and send me a quick message. I can be found on Instagram at anna.b.gray, on my website at limitlesslnc.com, and over on LinkedIn at Anna Gray. And I want you to remember, you are limitless. Until next time.